Okay, great. So my name is Dennis Speed, and on behalf of the LaRouche Political Action Committee, I want to welcome you to our June 4th session with Lyndon LaRouche. I think many of you, most of you know how we proceed. This is a dialogue in which what happens is that we open sometimes with a statement and sometimes with our questions and answers. When you come to the microphone, please state your question clearly and wait for an answer. If you have a follow-up, do the same after your first question has been answered. So, Lynn, I'd like to ask you, do you have an opening statement for us?
I think we have a statement on, in general, on the importance of the international field, which has to be considered more freshly today than was ever done thus far now. And what that means that I'm saying will come to you clearly, I think, in an accumulative approach to this subject matter.
Okay, very good. So we're going to take our first question. Let me also say for other people who have questions, what you can do is just line up here. There are chairs where you can sit to wait. So let's go our first question.
Hi, Lynn. Alvin here in New York. Good to see you. And just what you just referenced is what I wanted to talk with you about. We have a declaration on the site now to help our citizens stand up, get on their hind legs, and help shift the United States away. Well, first shift their attention to Europe so that they can see what the actual NATO Warsaw Conference is actually intending to do. Now, you have been emphasizing for weeks now the importance of President Putin's leadership and strategic outflanking. And it appears that there are movements now out of places like Japan and rumblings out of Germany that I'm not quite clear about, but that this break can occur and that Putin's influence and leadership is most certainly on the rise. And you're, of course, doing what you do best in intervening in these things on an international level. We also have in the U.S., I understand earlier this week that your friend, our friend Senator Gravel, was here in the U.S. organizing and challenging members of Congress on the subject of the 28 pages to follow his footsteps, his leadership on the Pentagon Papers, as he's famous for. So we have these things floating around, intermingling together. And we're here, tomorrow I'll be organizing in the Bronx, a number of us will actually, and we're going to be using this declaration to avoid World War III and move toward the future. So what I'd like to ask you, how do we continue to amp that? You mentioned that soon it will become more clear to us what is actually happening internationally and its importance. How do we transfer that to Joe Citizen?
Well, you have to tread it on a broad scale, not a local scale. You have to look at the mind of the people in society. Now, for example, you have a very important role of Putin, who is a leader, a very strong and powerful, efficient leader of the economy of the world. So this is no fact. This is no lack of fact. This is the fact, and therefore you find that Obama is the enemy of humanity. He's the most important in sense of an enemy of humanity. He kills people. His record has been to kill people on Tuesdays and to kill them when they were innocent people of any of the charges that were given to them, given at them. So we have, in Obama, we have a worthless president. And with the people around Obama, you have a worse kind of collection. Therefore, our commitment must be to associate ourselves with the attention of people who do understand what all this means. And don't give in to Obama. Don't give in to the kinds of forces that are similar to those of Obama. That's what the issue is. So you're not going to sit out there and say, I'm going to make a fine speech. And this fine speech is going to, inspire everybody to make great discoveries. Bunk. It doesn't work that way. It's hard work and deep insight into what's wrong. You should always look at the ideas mustering in the people who may be from afar. And I would suggest that to be something for you to pick up on, not because I'm lecturing you on that, but I think that you might pick up what that means.
I'll certainly try. Thanks.
Okay, next question.
Hi, Lynn. Bruce from New Jersey. I just wanted to report about, I've been getting emails from different congressmen throughout the region of New York, New Jersey. One of those congressmen about 6 weeks ago polled constituents on the question of releasing the 28 pages, identifying that he had read the 28 pages, was in agreement that it should be released. 6 weeks later, I questioned the DC office, and the response from the constituents of that congressman were that by 85% that they should release the 28 pages. Now, unfortunately, this congressman, in spite of that, and in spite of reading it himself, has not signed on to H.R. 14. And I just wanted to, it's clear that most of the Congress is leading from the rear, not, based on their constituents. So I wanted your thoughts on that.
What we're going to have to do, we're going to have to realize that that does exist as an important factor of corruption inside the United States in particular. And therefore, we're going to have to change that. And we cannot give way. For example, on the issue of the famous issues with the killing of so many people in Manhattan at that time, that issue still is reverberating because it's not forgettable. And yet, a number of leading members of the Congress and related institutions are committing the fraud of fraud itself, saying that we cannot do that. We cannot cancel that. We've got to be graceful to the Europeans. That is, to the Europeans of British and to some other people who are looking for war making. And therefore, that's what we have to do. We have to mobilize the minds of our people, both in our own organization and in organizations which should be sympathetic to our cause.
Thank you.
Next question.
This is Al Corby from New Jersey. Yesterday, we received a message that an officer in the Army wrote a letter to President Obama resigning his commission because of the savagery of the drone program. A lot of people don't realize that this is done from a comfortable chair in the White House, done with push buttons. Picture it to yourself. Suppose it was you in this neighborhood. You're coming home from work, you hear a loud explosion, You come around the corner and you see that the house next to you is in rubbles, lying on the ground in flames. Your house has flames coming from the windows. The message is going back to the White House. Mission accomplished. There is collateral damage. This is the sort of thing that is done from the White House. No danger to themselves. Don't you think this is time for the 25th Amendment to be enacted? Isn't this what it's for? Do we have to contend with barbarism and savagery? That's
Well,
my question.
these considerations are of paramount importance, but they do not win on their own. That we have to take that idea, the idea of what should be done, and we have to make it real. That is, we have to actually challenge Obama, for example. Now, we can do that. Putin, for example, of Europe, has done that. He's challenged Obama quite successfully. As a matter of fact, Obama is on the fall. He's on the edge of collapse. Now, Obama could create a great deal of harm to the population. No question about it. But if the people of the United States and other nations decide that they're not going to give in to Obama and to what he represents, then that in and of itself is ripe to be considered as on the edge of achievement. In other words, there are certain kinds of conditions in government and so forth, these kinds of matters, in which you can say, people, well, we are living in a hopeless cause. Well, we're no longer in that. We are living in a deadly cause, but we're not in a hopeless one. And what we're going to have to do is get a deeper insight into what the forces are that are necessary and are able to solve this problem. Because you'll find that with enough courage from enough citizens, we can defeat Obama and everything that he represents and people that like him represents. We can do it, but we're going to have to do it willfully and confidently. So I would suggest that we just start thinking about how does our mind, when working properly, how does our mind seem to accomplish miracles? They're not really miracles, but they're just the courage of people. You know, it's in music, in classical music. We do in Manhattan area, we have a lot of attention, more and more attention to classical musical composition and its performance on an international scale. And this is a power, because this power of that kind of classical musical composition, when understood effectively, is actually a force which can defeat great enemies of mankind.
Okay. Next. Is there someone in the back there? Okay, well, go ahead.
I don't know. I was told I was number 4. So.
Right.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, Mr. LaRouche. This is Jessica White from Brooklyn. Can you hear me? Should I start again? Good afternoon, Mr. LaRouche. This is Jessica White from Brooklyn. You can hear me okay?
I hear you. We're a little bit weak, but that's all right. Basically, you're perfectly understood.
Thank you. Okay. I'm a teacher, as you know, and everyone here knows, and we have a lot of stuff. We collect a lot of things. My mom was a teacher, and she collected a lot of books and papers and stuff. And I just came up with this question that I wanted to pose to you. In going through some of the books from my mother's teaching, in trying to sort through things and kind of clear out the house, I came across a book that was published in the early 50s that was written by Bertrand Russell. And this book was on parenting and children. It kind of shocked me that this book was around, and then when I thought about it, there's probably other things that the teachers were introduced to at that time. And, you know, in looking through more things, I'll probably find more Bertrand Russell books. But parenting is not something that I think of Bertrand Russell as doing. He's not a child psychiatrist or psychologist. He was not a teacher in a school system or anything like that. But one of the things that stood out, and that is totally opposite to what my mom used to do with me and my two sisters, it said in one area that children should not be pushed and browbeaten into careers that may be too difficult for them. And I thought about this and what's going on in the school system now. We have a whole thing on career readiness, but the careers that this core, Common Core system is pushing on the children is go to college, but they're talking about community colleges. Get 2 years, that's enough. You don't have to get a BA. You don't have to go 4 years. If you want to be a doctor, it's okay to be anything other than that. You can be something else, like, you know, it's nothing wrong with being a nurse's assistant, but the aspiration to be the higher thing is kind of put down. So I would like you to comment on, you once said that Bertrand Russell was the epitome of evil. And in reading this, where you don't push your children into doing anything worthwhile, because it might be difficult, but they're little brains to understand, I'd like you to kind of comment on what some of the things you said about Bertrand Russell, and I would appreciate that, because it's just amazing, some of the things that you find in
Bertrand Russell was a piece of criminality, satanic qualities. He actually induced it in among people who had been scientists earlier in those decades, immediate decades. They all sold their souls out in order to get a better income. Einstein was the only man who really met up to the charge, and that's the thing that followed. What we need to do, really, is study Einstein. He's the only one who knew what he was talking about rightly, and therefore we should be organizing people to say, get that crap out of our school system. Get it out of the minds of our people, get it out of the minds of our so-called scientists who ain't much work in scientists, and build a basis by that mechanism which destroys Bertrand Russell and everything that he represents, but really goes into opening the gate for the access to the true principles of human discovery.
Thank you.
Okay. Next question. Me if I Justin.
How you doing? I'm Lorraine. We don't see eye to eye, but that's okay. Isn't that what a free world is all about? Hi. Hi. I would have to say that I disagree with you, and I think I said that already, but I don't believe that Obama is the result of a culmination of evil. I think actually in 1857, okay, and as a matter of fact in New York City, you're seeing a culmination of more than 100 years of 1857, of the robber barons, who set everything in motion for things to be arranged and set up the way they are. Okay? For example, okay, take for example the mafia. Okay? The mafia was put into place, okay, but the people who are in the mafia are the ones that go to jail. Okay, but in fact, there was a culmination of things that occurred before that. For example,
I don't want to interrupt you. However, what we do know you're here for the first time. You're an author. If you could just please ask a question, because we don't take long statements,
okay,
and let him
so my
respond.
question
And
is,
you can ask a second question, a follow-up question, if you
well,
have one.
my question would be, I would have to disagree with you, and I believe that what you're seeing now is not necessarily Obama's fault, and neither is it the people that are in government now. It's a culmination of things that occurred before it. Okay, we like to scapegoat certain people, but in fact, the people of 1857 and the people before that set up the world the way it is.
Well, the problem is not lying in that your description of the thing. That is not really valid. The problem is the need to bring people according to Einstein's standard. And Einstein's standard is the only competent standard since the birth of the 20th century. All other doctrines are wrong and dangerous. That's what's happened.
I don't mean to say, but I don't understand where you're coming from when you say that. I mean, what part of Einstein? Einstein said mediocre minds are a waste. I mean, I don't understand your answer.
Right.
Well, the point is that what people believe in, the people on the street, the people in schools, the people in teaching in schools, the teaching of policy in terms of the United States and of other nations, that the problem lies in looking at Bertrand Russell, studying him carefully, following his traces, and rejecting all contrary opinion.
All right, whatever.
Perhaps it will become clear as the rest of the dialogue goes on. I'll just want to say before the next speaker that while it's true that Bertrand Russell was not a child psychiatrist, he was a child psychotic. Go ahead.
He's a satanic figure.
Hi, Lynn, it's Daniel. And can you hear this better?
I need it a little more, I need a little higher level of audio.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question for you, which may or may not be related. Can genius be taught?
In a sense, yes. But what happened with the whole idea of genius is a quality of persons who have developed themselves to levels which are far beyond those of other people. Now, if you look in the history of mankind, you can trace this kind of category, a person quite well. I have enjoyed that material. I have seen the greatest achievements in terms of genius of people of their own time. I've seen and implicitly recognized some of the greatest minds died, and there was no one to replace them as a need. So the question is, we have to concentrate on the idea there has to be a standard of performance which, like Einstein, and there were the people before him. You know, Shakespeare himself had a certain kind of this quality. He wasn't an Einstein, but he had a certain quality which is very useful and made possible progress of mankind. in his own time. So the question is, we have to concentrate on what are the experiences which mankind has found, like from Jeanne d'Arc, for example, the hero figure. And she died, was murdered, she was cooked. In fact, he was cooked by a British crowd. But she survived in the memory of her and became a great force in France and for France at a later point. And that thing has, despite what some French politicians might say, the Jeanne d'Arc, the essence of Jeanne d'Arc is something which lives still in Jeanne d'Arc.
Thank you.
Next.
Good afternoon, Mr. LaRouche. I'm going to preface my question with a little bit about Chinese culture. I know that in their dealings with the world, they have a policy of not rocking the boat, you could say. So my question is how do you feel about the Chinese joining the IMF's special drawing rights this September?
I don't think that China, the Chinese leadership, wants anything to do with anything that might come into conviction with something like Obama or something like people like that. Obama is something which is to be removed from the record of the human race. That's the point. The sooner we get rid of him, we don't intend to murder him, we might find it probably practical to torture him. Or we just don't want to torture him, or we just want to forget about him altogether. But the point is that the mankind must actually think in terms of what we would call a principle, scientific principle, social principle. And it's the ability of great scientists, great musicians, and people like that, of those categories. These are the people who inspire the advancement of mankind through the minds of individuals in mankind, among mankind. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for, try to grab an idea which you can adduce, an idea you can find in exploration. You want to see in yourself something of that creative power. You want to learn it. You want to accept it. You want to develop it. You want to preach it. You want to push it. You want to make it grow. Because just to get to the meat of the thing, what is a human mind? What is the human mind? It's a creative force when functioning. And this power, this force, is the thing that makes mankind meaningful. Without this quality, mankind ain't useful. Just think of the number of citizens of the United States who seem to be surviving, seem to have strong opinions, so forth, but it's all junk. They don't have any brain power of a maritime point, unless we can push up into seeing what that is. Our job is a mission job, a missionary job, is to develop in our own citizens, and among other citizens as well, to build a process of intellectual development which is truly unique. Not some guess make, but something which is precious. And you try to express what that goal is in terms of things that you can come to understand as being necessary.
Thank you.
Next.
Hi, Mr. LaRouche. This is Rick from Bergen County, New Jersey. We talk about paradigm shift in moving from the I win, you lose old paradigm and the need to go to a new paradigm, which is that we would both win. And it reminded me of the early 20th century when Einstein published his papers in 1905. And it seems that there was a big paradigm shift in science that some people have described as a structure of scientific revolution. So it seems like we're talking about a revolution in a paradigm, a bringing in a new paradigm, which I believe would be a revolution of a sort. Can you think of a previous historical time where such a huge paradigm shift that we're talking about has happened?
Yeah, sure. We've seen it in the Renaissance itself. I've had a lot of experience with that in different parts of my life. It works that way. And you find, but you say, well, how does this work? That's the question. Well, what the truth of the matter is that when human beings develop, what is it that makes them develop? That's the question. Now, most people today, into society today, in most of the world, do not develop. They come to think what they call development sometimes, but it's not development. See, the problem is this great story, this great fraud. The fraud is the assumption that the human mind is driven into creativity on the basis of a newborn baby. Not the parents, but the baby itself. And this is a sort of a unique thing in some respects, but also it's true. All the great geniuses of science and culture were of that nature. They astonished their children. The children sat in awe at the achievement of the genius of the children, because they knew they were superior morally to their own parents and to the generation that they represented. That is the true mystery. In other words, it's not finding some smart guy out there that makes human history. It's when something happens where the human mind is developed by some mysterious way, and this power is what makes mankind important. Mankind's existence depends upon that particular kind of achievement. It is not done by earning lessons, by doing this, during that. It's the stroke of what we call pure genius. And what you want to do is you want to find out where genius is, find out how you can use it, and teach your parents how to discover it.
Thank you.
Yeah, next.
Hi, Lynn. It's Chance. It's been a while, but I've been in Germany for the last 3 years, and it's very interesting being here in Manhattan for the various activities that we've had. And one thing you've always stressed is how do we recreate the Manhattan Project in other areas? And I've been thinking about this a lot from the standpoint of European culture. And specifically in Germany, there is a tendency to over-examine things and to not allow a certain amount of, I guess you could say, an internal instinct, which expresses itself in Manhattan as a type of patriotism. And we noticed this on Memorial Day. We had the celebration. A lot of people were performing music. A lot of it was the American pieces. And in my mind, I just imagined how it wasn't a musical performance. It was actually it was a response to being an American on Memorial Day and expressing what that meant. So my question is how do you recreate something like that in Germany, where you have this tendency to not necessarily, express that patriotism? It seems like you would have.
And the greatest scientist in Germany, that is in the life of his life, and he died, and he was killed essentially by Obama. That is, this great president, this great leader rather, was a creative force, and there was almost no one like him. There were some people who approximated what he did, but he died because he had complicated diseases, that is, conflicting kinds of diseases for which he could find no cure. So he died under those circumstances. We now have in the United States, we have in the southern states, in a good part of the southern states, we are taking and rebuilding that program. We're developing it. We're not, it's groping for it. You're finding the same thing in China. The leadership in China is going through a phase where in this coming period, during that period, you're going to find a quality of genius in China, in the Chinese establishment, which you would never have sought before. And when the people will discover this, they're going to look at what happened in the testing of the principle of somebody's whistling wide. And we're going to get to a second chance where we're going to get, first of all, the next thing that's coming during this term. Then in the following term, there's going to be another great turn coming out of China. And this development is going to be a leading force in the development of mankind in general. That's what the truth is. And it's the same thing, is you have to say, the genius does not come from babies. Genius comes from babies who have a power to grow up, to think, and so forth, where others have not. And the people who are these geniuses are the people who may enable mankind to go into the whole system and create a new idea of the universe. And that's what the point is. We can do it, but you have to find the children, the geniuses, the Einsteins, and people like him. Now, the Einsteins will give you the means to save the rescue of other people. And that genius is the thing, is really sacred, as with Einstein.
Thank you.
Next.
Hi, Lynn. I'm asking a question that was sent in by Avneet, who unfortunately cannot be here, but she wanted to ask you because it's quite important and has to do with something coming up this week. So she asked the following. She says, the Indian Prime Minister, Modi, is on his way to Washington, D.C. this week, where in a 2-day visit, he will meet with President Obama, and he will address a joint session of Congress. He is coming to the United States after visiting in Afghanistan, and where he is right now, and Qatar, Switzerland, and then finally he'll be in the United States. In a recent interview with the Wall Street Journal, Prime Minister Modi maintained the non-aligned stance of his government. Given that India, in a recent brilliant move to extend the Silk Road by helping Iran build the Chabahar port, what do you think that Modi is coming to the United States for, and what should he expect?
Well, he's not there to see Obama. But he's making the visit for what it's worth as cheap material. And he's trying to capture an idea and get rid of Obama, or throw him out. You could throw him out of power. It is to point out that he is really a failure, that he's disgusting. He should never have been born, or things like that. Those are the kinds of terms. So what we're looking at is this idea, this wonderful idea, that there are certain babies which are born and developed. And they are born and developed in such a way that they become what we call geniuses, like Einstein. And therefore, you will find that the great people in science and culture in general will tend to lean toward the achievement of real human creativity. And that's what we're looking for. We want to find the babies who are going to be the agents, the leading agents for bringing ordinary human beings into the quality of the practice of genius.
Thank you.
Let me point out before the next speaker says something that when Modi was here 2 years ago, he emphasized, and it was a great surprise to many of the Indian people, the 650 million people who were the young people of India. And he said, that is our greatest power. Just wanted to reference that because some people don't know the reference. Asika, go ahead.
Hi, Lynn. This is Asika from New Jersey. I have exactly the question on what you stated about genius, and I hope when we look for that baby, we know what we are looking for. But I've been personally having a lot of question about dialogue process and communication of idea in society. There are a number of discussion I had that I had, unfortunately, I had to characterize it as failure in terms of conveying idea or inspiring the other person's mind. When you look at characters as Einstein, one thing that comes up to me is generation prior to Einstein, where you had Mendelssohn family, collaborating with Humboldt, Schiller, and other great, Riemann, of course, and other great minds in Germany, who were trying to create the nation. So maybe if you can give us a better sense of what kind of society do we need to create to find and generate genius?
All the greatest minds that I know of in history are of that nature. You find in every nick and good. What happens is you got a great genius. Somebody becomes a genius. But it's not just becoming a genius. It's that the quality of genius, if infects them, they have it, and then if they are smart, if they are up to living to what they should be, they will express what we call genius. And therefore, we will use that in education. You will find great teachers are always that way. All great teachers are geniuses. And they seem to become in various ways, various kinds of ways. But that's the way it works. And of course, the foils do not like that. They want everybody to become El Cheapo. So don't hobble with cheapos, and just realize that there are people who have a quality of genius, and they don't smudge it. They recognize a genius in themselves, and they realize that this talent which has come to them is something which is of a very serious nature for the benefit of mankind. It's when mankind sees himself as being a discoverer whose work is indispensable for mankind's future. That's where the beauty comes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. LaRouche. This is Inola McGuire. How are you today?
Hearing Cape Early.
Okay. Yesterday.
I hear you.
You can hear me?
Get some amplitude.
Okay. Much better.
So we can hear you.
Function yesterday, which was the Hindu.
We're having trouble hearing you.
Huh?
Get these guys to help you.
That's better. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Inola McGuire. I attended a function yesterday, which was the Indo-Caribbean Alliance, and it was very good. It had most of the people were Indo-Caribbean, but there were some black people there, and it was very good. You know, I always talk about the Caribbean. I'm pro-Caribbean, but this guest speaker said that the Caribbean people must get together. The English-speaking Caribbean people must get together and pool our resources so the region and those people who are living here can benefit from what is going on in America. So it was very good, well received by everyone. And I think it was a boost for most people to hear. And Judy Clark was there as well. And we gave out some of your literature. And people were very receptive. So what I would like to know, if you have any pointers as to how those geniuses in the Caribbean who think they're from a small region can contribute towards the world.
I have a friend of mine who's deceased, of course, and this friend of mine was one of the greatest bass baritones in the history of the United States. And he died in course. He was denied the right to have a wife because the wife figure was chopped up, in a sense, by demanding that she do what the opera does in Manhattan. And he went through a torture, and she went through a torture, and they went through a life with a torture. This is the kind of thing you've got to think about. How do you ensure that some of the greatest minds in art and other things are precious, but these things are destroyed or mauled or manipulated? For the case of, say, the opera, Manhattan, in Manhattan, the opera there. That kind of thing. What you're looking at is a kind of degeneration, a moral fault. And that's the way it is. So therefore the question is two things. There are factors which do account for what we call genius, or and in time it often comes up freezing out freely in society, and people are captured by it. They're infected by it. They admire people who are creative, and this is all one big picture. But the point is that we have to look at this picture. You have to look at the actual role of true genius, individual human genius. And you have to find out where that genius lies, where you can capture it, where you can make it play for the sake of humanity and for the sake of all humanity. No, this is not something mysterious. It's something difficult for some people to catch. I am not one of those people who cannot catch genius.
Okay, thank you very much.
Specifically, just so to say, Mr. LaRouche was referring to the practice at the Metropolitan Opera of segregation. And that's something we can discuss at some other point, just so everybody knows what he was referring to. It was widespread, and it happened to several of our friends who are now deceased, and we don't tolerate that, and we are going to fight against it in the present form in Manhattan right now. Okay, sir, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Because I know. All right. Yeah, hello?
Hello.
Okay, just checking. Yeah, my name is Omari McKay, and I'm from Staten Island. And the question I have is, and I mean, it's based on the fact that our society tends to not link us to genius, so to speak. Getting, that's the vibe that I get. But what is the best way to search out? I mean, what kind of environment is best at bringing out the genius in children, and how do we foster it within this American society?
Well, first of all, you have to have a genius in children. And you have to have a condition under which the children are energized and given access to great discovery. Now, not all children will come up to that standard. But if you don't have any children that meet that standards, then society is in a terrible condition. What happens is genius nurtures genius. And you want genius of some kind to educate children, to educate the people who have a great skill. And you want to put that thing to harness, because to say this person and this person's activity is essential for the progress of humanity. Once you see that and think that thought, you are on the road to genius.
All right, thanks.
Okay, you have a follow-up? Okay. Is there another question? This will be our final question, I think, because of our time constraints.
I just want to be thankful.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to be thankful for your genius in our generation and our century, because none of us would be here had you not taken this course in history. And I just want to add an anecdote. I hope it's truthful. I've read it, but that doesn't mean it's true. That you made the reference to in infancy and genius. And the story that I discovered is that Albert Einstein never uttered a word until he was 2 years old. His parents took him to specialists throughout Germany who had some of the best specialists in the world and studied this dilemma. Was there something wrong? Could he not hear? He couldn't speak. What shall we do with little Albert? So mother brought home a surprise one day, a baby sister. She presented the little sister to Albert and said, Albert, this is your baby sister. And he spoke his first words, which was, "Where are the wheels?"
You got it.
It's not
You
going
got
to be obvious who our geniuses are.
it. You're right. See, that's the relevant example.
Right. Okay. So is there another question or not? Okay.
Okay, Lynn, I have a question from a contact who speaks Spanish. And it's a good topic. She says, how do we stop World War III? Because she says there's a lot of confusion in the population, and I've been reading about this danger, but I don't agree that we have to vote for any of the candidates because they all stink. But what do we do? Because we have to have somebody. So she just wants to clarify what can we do in the meantime?
First thing you have to do is get rid of Obama. And that's a good starting point. And throw him out. Throw him out of all offices. Look, the guy's he's a madman. He's a mass murderer. He has been on record a man who killed people in great numbers on Tuesdays. And he's probably still doing it. Everything about Obama is satanic. And those who worship and support Obama, such as, you know, we have a couple of presidential candidates here, and they're not qualified to exist. That is for any social purposes. And that's the point. We need institutions which can be developed in a way which provide the means by which human beings in societies can share the fruits of their achievement. And that's the way you go with it. You don't know what you're getting, but you find a child or you find people who are creative, and you say they are creative. The evidence is there. Hey, we're lucky. We got a good lucky stroke on this one. We won for mankind through the achievements which were induced in that child and in that child's education.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you can in a minute. Let's just see what the individual says.
Good afternoon, Mr. LaRouche.
Yes.
This is Patrick from Greenwich, Connecticut. Can you
Yes.
hear me? Okay.
Oh.
As you can see, I'm in a different uniform. I have honored our troops. Now it's time to get down to business. Okay. And these are my fatigues for work. And I don't go around killing people. What I do is educate. Right now, I'm working on something different. My plan now is to personally deliver in person the pamphlets and newest leaflets to our elected officials, like the first selectman and state representatives and all others. And by doing this personally, they have to accept the literature because I'm a constituent and this is my right. And they have to honor it. And then what I do is set up a meeting for the following week so we could discuss what was in it. So they have no excuse not to read it. Otherwise, hell will break loose. But this is my new strategy. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's pretty good practice, because some of these practices seem to be a little bit jerky. That is, people do something, find that they practice something, and they find that it works, and therefore they will stick to that. And what will happen is usually something good. And if the thing can be cross-fertilized, and there's a lot of good cross-fertilizer in the process of education. And if you get people who will look at something and say, "Oh yeah, that is what worked," and therefore when people begin to share that sense, "Hey, wait a minute, this worked," and that is an aspect of this process of the mystery of achievement of the human mind.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so for various reasons, including time constraints, I think that's going to be it for the day. But I have a question for you as a final question or a concluding question. There's an event that you may have heard about, and even if you didn't hear about it, I'm going to tell you about it, which is that the fighter Muhammad Ali passed away today. Now, I know that there was something you used to say, and it was in many of our publications in the 70s and 80s, that a person must use his mind like Muhammad Ali used his fists. Now, some of us should remember his name was first Cassius Clay, and that in his first fight, he had changed his name, and this became a great controversy. He was disliked severely for that, and then he said he wouldn't go fight in Vietnam, and he was stripped of his title. Yeah. And what he said many things. He did say, "Ain't no Vietnamese ever called me," and the N-word. But he also said, "If I'm going to die, I'll stay right here and fight my enemy, which is you." That was the thing that people never. So I'm bringing him up because, of course, he had won the title 3 times. You used to talk a lot also about Jesse Owens. We know that sometimes in sports, a message is sent. But there's something very specific which I wanted to say to you, Lynn, and bring up. Malcolm X recruited Muhammad Ali. You used to see Malcolm up at the Audubon Ballroom. And this whole idea of what Muhammad Ali really was, not just as an individual, but what he meant. There's a time that it's necessary to stand up and fight, and sometimes a person has limited resources. And I think my question for you, for all of us here, because we got to stand up and fight, and some of us have limitations. So how do we take what you've been talking about all for the last hour, this idea of genius, how do we take this and make this our way of fighting?
What you're talking about essentially is an area of functioning which has an aspect like genius, but which may not be successfully defined as genius. Now, what you have then is the mess presented to you as a result of this process. If you can get through to people who have these kinds of potential, and if they will accept that kind of potential, then they are likely to be successful. But you can still recognize the fact that even if they failed, what they were doing was not simply a failure. It was the need for a better development of their skills.
Right. Okay, good. So, do you have anything else you'd like to say to us today before we shut this down?
I think I would like to say that the world as a whole may be depend upon, in some great degree, on the future of mankind. Mm-hmm. And that will be made clear to you, I think, in time to come.
Okay. All right, fine. Thank you very much, Lynn.
Yeah.